My name is Sharon Scinta. I live in Fairport, New York, and I want to share a miraculous healing that God performed on me with COVID. I came down with a cough, and I went and took a COVID test, which the test result came back positive on October 16th, and then I was admitted into the ICU October 20th. When I was admitted into the intensive care unit, I was put into a medically induced coma and was on life support for 2.5 weeks. They tried to give me the antiviral medication, which was shutting my liver down, so they had to stop that. But I was on full life support, feeding tube, unable to respond in any way. Had a lot of things medically happening where my body was shaking and they couldn't figure out what it was. And the best choice was to put me in the coma. I had respiratory failure, high fever, and COVID.
We were just kind of simultaneously, me and my cousin, trying to figure this all out, while also working with Jim to figure out what we're going to do going forward when she first went into the hospital. And we were all devastated. My girlfriend had just gotten sick. She had COVID and was isolating in the other room in my apartment. And my roommate was trying to help out with that too. So I was feeding her, under the door, like kind of like a prisoner, and also simultaneously trying to figure out visiting hours and stuff. And they were keeping it very limited. I think it was 4 hours. You could only stay 4 hours and you had to leave. They would just kick you right out. And for a long time, she was not, there was not any, responses or any real sign of her being there. And she was just kind of gone. They were telling me she was in a medically induced coma, and it was scary. It was really scary. I had never dealt with something like this before.
When I was put into a medically induced coma, I went through a lot of dark stuff in my past that I had buried. I found myself in what looked like a very, very dark hallway with many, many rooms that were very, very dark. And I could feel that I needed to go into each room and deal with these things that I had forgotten, swept under the rug, and a lot that I was aware of that I needed to let go of. Every room was pitch dark, so it was more than physically walking through it. It was spiritually walking through it. And I knew every room had my dad in some form or fashion in it. And I was able to go in and just face what was in there and deal with it and give it to God and let it go. And when I'd walk out of one room, I felt relieved, but I knew I had another room to go into that was going to be just as scary, if not scarier. Okay, in the first room, I could see a point of view of being in the bedroom, in my childhood bedroom, with my father acting inappropriately, sexually, for a parent. I was used to his physical abuse and emotional abuse, and that I had forgave. But this apparently was something that I had not let go of. And I kind of felt like it was generational. And I had always specifically blamed him. But when this happened, I was given kind of a view of it being his father, his grandfather, and on and on and on. And that helped me to let go and leave it in there and walk out and then go into the next room. In the second room, I couldn't see like I could see a vision in the first one. It was just black, and I knew that my father was in the room. And ironic part about that is the last time I spoke to my father on the phone before he passed away, I asked him if he was afraid to die, and he said no, because it's just all black after you pass. There isn't anything after. And I said, I disagree with you. I do believe there is an afterlife and that you have to be ready for it and prepared for it. But that's exactly what he said, is it was black. And that's what these rooms were. They were black with him in it. So there was a connection there. While I was in the coma, my family, my mother, who couldn't do anything because she's elderly and in her own apartment, contacted as many churches as she could that don't even know us to please pray for me. We had family all over the country praying, and it was breaking them. They were tearful prayers that everybody prayed. And my boyfriend, who's a manly man, was broken. He was broken. And my son, Chris, he unfortunately had to make the decisions that a child shouldn't really have to make for their parent. Do we intubate her? Is it okay if we do this? Is it okay if we do that? From what my family was all telling me, they were not giving them hope. They said, we don't know what's going to happen. They didn't think I was going to make it.
Every time that they would say something, it still wouldn't stick. It wouldn't feel like they were telling the truth. Because I would just look over, and what I was hearing and what I was seeing were two different things. And it was it could be a very hopeless feeling, you know. And I definitely was upset. I was very sad. Very, very sad, because, you know, that's my mom. That's my person. So seeing her, such a strong woman, in such a weak position, was hard. It was hard to see. I definitely cried a lot. I cried a lot on the way there, on the way back. I tried not to do it around her, just in case she could see or hear me. I wanted to be strong for her. But I'm definitely very much a sensitive person, and always have been, and it deeply affected me, as anything that happens to her does, because she means so much to me. During that time, I had heard a prophetic word through YouTube. A pastor had said it, and I, you know, brought it back to God, you know, prayed about it. And what the word was about was to literally get a piece of paper and write down all the things that you desire in life. Everything. Anything that you can think of that is very important, write it all down. And then I did. And I heard, when I was alone, I was sitting in my living room, I heard, point to the most important one. And I took my finger and I pointed to my mom's health. And that next day, I got a call from the nurses. They said, I don't know what happened. We have no idea. But she is talking. She's moving her limbs. She has function back. And the day before that, she was having body twitches and was not responding and grabbing onto my arm and pressing into it really hard so I don't leave. And I ended up with, you know, marks on my skin. I have pictures of it. And that next day, I got a call from the nurses, and they said, we don't know what happened. But I knew. I knew what happened. It was that exact wish granted immediately, because it was the most important thing. And that was more than money, fame, career, anything. And I can't even describe how amazing of a miracle that is, that could be possible. And it just further drove home the point that literally anything is possible through God. That is the only way that these things can happen.
In the third room, I felt immense fear, really, really scared. And that was something that I had to leave in there. And I know that my dad was in there, and the blackness was in there. And it was hard, because I knew every room I was leaving him in with that emotion and that experience. So that's tough, but people choose their paths. He chose to have black, and I don't choose black. I choose light. So in the fourth room, I could sense the fear, probably my family. I had a very close family member that I grew up with who was also sexually abused severely to the point of reconstructive surgery being necessary. And that one was a hard one for me to let go of, to forgive my father, because she and I were so very close, and she was a child when that happened. And the guilt that comes along with somebody sexually abusing you is to make you feel like it's your fault. So when it got shifted to my loved one, it was hard for me to let go of that, to consciously say, okay, I forgive you for that. And it was to the point where I wanted to put his ashes in a toilet, honestly, because I wanted to punish him for doing that to her. And that was before all this happened with COVID and I went into the coma. I felt like dumping his ashes and being as disrespectful as he was to us. And when I came out of the coma, I realized I couldn't put all the blame on him, that it has been a generational cycle of abuse that doesn't relieve him from any responsibility. But I saw that it's extended further than what I thought. After I left the fourth room, I had realized that I had to forgive him, and it was very easy at that point that I did forgive him. And I honestly feel that these things that I had to face in these rooms were things that would have kept me out of heaven, which is a pretty strong thing to say, but I do believe that. And they were affecting me, my health, my outlook on the future. It affected everything in my life, my relationships. So I just feel lighter, like really, I unpacked those suitcases and I left them. And I don't have them. They're not part of my daily anymore. I don't blame myself. I feel different than when I went in. Even in photographs, you can see it looks like after a car accident. Ever since I was in pictures, my eyes look different. They look blank, like nobody was behind them. And after this, when I woke up, it looks like I'm back. I feel back. I've never opened my blinds, my windows. I always kept them closed, stayed up all night, slept all day. Now every day I open that window before the sun even comes up. But I just feel the light. I want the light. I crave the light. When I got home, I had new parts that were shipped to me from my CPAP machine. And I used it, and I had no leaks in the seals. Everything was 100%, and I had no events. I did not stop breathing once. And before, it would be like 17 stops a minute. So now I'm not even using the machine. And I'm sleeping like a normal person. It feels like my memory is sharper. My awareness. When I came out, colors were the most vibrant things I'd ever seen. Jim's sweatshirt that's red. It was just the most red thing I'd ever seen. And my blue sweatshirt is just, that's starting to fade now. But for the first few weeks that I came home, it was incredible. My occupational therapist, she had came, and they're both discharging me. And my occupational therapist said that she had never seen somebody regain their muscle strength as fast as I did. She's like, this is unprecedented. I've never seen it. So the picture that my niece Alexis painted for me while I was in the hospital and in the coma. And I didn't see it until I got back, and she was already back in Arizona. But it struck me because black seems to be throughout my experience. My father saying he believes after you die, it's just black. The rooms being black. And Alexis painted this, and when she was painting it, is when the Lord spoke to her and said, "Are you going to trust me?" And when she said that, that's when my son knew, she knew I was going to pull through this. Even as bad as it was, This picture, to me, she apologized because she'd never painted before. To me, this represents coming out of that black and into the gray and then into the light. And you don't usually, what's odd about this is she knew as soon as she got the blank canvas that she was going to, exactly what she was going to paint. And you don't see these beautiful colors on a tree in the fall at night. It's life. It just reminds me of life. And this picture means the world to me because it represents that, coming out of that darkness. And the fact that this was happening the same time I was going through what I was going through is truly amazing and a miracle in itself. After I had been home for a while, I posted my praise report because it was a miracle that I was home and walking and talking and functioning. And so I posted it. I posted a couple pictures that my son had showed me when I was in the hospital. My mom, I guess, shared it while I was in the coma. Well, when I woke up from the coma and I could talk, I said to my son that I had seen that I was being interviewed and he was being interviewed by a young female filmmaker. I kept saying, I feel like you know her. Do you know a young filmmaker? He kept saying no, but I couldn't get off it. So I kept asking him. And then my mom called me and said that her helper saw the praise report and shared it and wanted to interview us. So right now I'm looking at cameras and equipment, and it happened. So that's how I know that this is supposed to happen. So I'm not a preacher. I'm not reading to you out of the Bible, but wherever you are, whoever you are, and whatever you have to deal with, you can just ask God to take it away, and He will. And I think that that's important enough for me, being a shy person, to be sitting in front of cameras right now, and for God to give me that vision of the young filmmaker that I'm looking at now, who happens to be a Christian and also felt that my story, my testimony, is redemption. So it's important